generational differences are not new. We always accuse the older generations of being stuck in the mud and, not willing to change. And we always accuse the young generations of want to break everything, and that they think they know more. That's old. What's new is the entitlement thing. That seems to be relatively new. And there's some interesting reasons for it. One, it's a very connected generation, obviously, because of the internet, and they actually have more awareness of what's going on in the world and have access to unlimited amounts of information, obviously. But if you think when we started our careers, we were, I think, objectively speaking, idiots. We came into the workforce actually knowing nothing, right? And so we had no choice but to defer to those who had more experience so that we could learn to advance our careers, because we actually knew nothing, and we knew nothing. This young generation that's coming in are starting work on day one with a knowledge of how technology works, how personal branding works, how social media works, and they're actually bringing a skill set that sometimes those at work don't have. And so I think what it does is it produces sometimes a warped sense of value when I show up on day one for work, which is, I don't think you realize what you're getting here. And sometimes blinds into the fact that though those things are true, I also need you to learn all these things and you have no life experience yet. And so I think that the way we interpret that is entitlement. But what we also see is that when you bring that young people are bringing the sense of apparent self-confidence to the workforce, learning very quickly that work doesn't work the same way as school, which doesn't work the same way as your parents taking care of everything for you, which doesn't work the same way. We may not need those skills today. We need other skills. That what you find is that it can be quite traumatic. And you'll find that a lot of the self-confidence that they show is actually false. And it's actually a very insecure generation that struggles with coping mechanisms. And we're seeing that in rises of anxiety, depression, and unfortunately suicides as well. And lacking those human skills that we talked about before, so necessary for people to feel confident in work. So I think all that is required, quite frankly, is empathy. And though it would be nice to demand that they have empathy for us, that we actually have gone through a little bit and have seen a few things in the world, that's less likely to happen. And we're supposed to be the older, more experienced ones. So I think we have to lead. We have to show empathy. That doesn't mean agree. That doesn't mean that we can't hold them accountable, but we have to learn to try and understand the life that they have grown up in, which is different than the life we grew up in, and that affects their worldview and their behavior. So I think when you talk about the millennial video, yes, there was some people who were a little pissed off, and they would say things like, I know many millennials who aren't like that. Of course. But what I found was the opposite, which is the huge number of young people who came to me and said, thank you. You're helping me understand why I'm struggling, that there are other circumstances in the world that are affecting me. In other words, what it was an expression of empathy, which is, let me try and understand why people keep asking me why you're impossible to lead, because that's where that video was born from. 100% of the meetings I had, 100% of the speeches that I gave, invariably the first question was, I'm struggling to lead my millennials. Why are they such an unleadable generation? And so I just went on the journey. I think the word vulnerability scares a lot of people, especially in business. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to share their weaknesses. Why would I do that? It'll hurt my promotability. I don't want to be humiliated, So I think first and foremost, we have to define what it means. This is why I like terms like psychological safety or circle of safety, that we have to build circles of safety. And I don't need to use the word vulnerable, because then I end up having a semantic debate with someone. So when we talk about being in a circle of safety or feeling psychological safety or being vulnerable, what that means is, and I think we have to be declarative about what it means by the way of example. What it means is that I can raise my hand and say, I made a mistake, or I don't understand, or I don't think I have enough training to do the job you're asking me to do, or I need help, without any fear of humiliation or retribution. In fact, I can say these things with absolute confidence that someone will rush in to support me, whether it's my colleagues or my leader. And we've all been on a team where we have that. Unfortunately, we've also all been on a team where you'll never admit a mistake, you'll never admit any gap an intelligence or something you don't know. You'll never admit you don't have enough training. You'll never ask for help because it will get you humiliated or affect your promotability. And so if we can talk about the fact that we've all built like that and we'd rather work in situations like this, then we have to reward that behavior. One, we have to set as an example. So to your point, when you express that you don't know something or ask for help, that's a good thing. Also, I think people make a big mistake where expressing vulnerability is not the same as being vulnerable. Expressing weakness is not the same as being weak. So, for example, if you sat at a meeting and you went, I don't understand this. I need somebody to explain this to me. I don't know this, right? There's no way you're inspiring confidence in your company. But if you simply own it, like, hey, I don't understand a single word of this deck. If somebody can please just explain it to me because I'm the complete idiot and I don't understand any of this tech stuff, that would be really helpful. And if you just say it with confidence and you own it, it's the confidence that's inspiring, not the expression of the weakness. So I think if you're confident in your weakness, and if you serve as that example, it allows others to do the same, also rewarding the behavior. In other words, when somebody asks for help, recognize, point it out, and say, yes, more of that, please. Because I think the incentive structures and reward structures affect people's behavior as well. So I think the failing is we're looking for silver bullet. We're looking for the evaluation that gets everything. And the reality is there's multiple things we're evaluating. Usually what we're evaluating is the stuff that's easy to measure. Metrics, right? We measure someone's output just because it's easy to measure. And just as an aside, and this influenced heavily my thinking on the topic. The Navy SEALs, which are not far from here in Coronado, the Navy SEALs, within the Navy SEALs is a more elite group called SEAL Team 6, which many of us are familiar with. And I had the opportunity to spend some time with the head of training for SEAL Team 6. And I asked him a very simple question, which is, how do you choose from the Navy SEALs who goes to be on SEAL Team 6? Because they're all amazing. And he drew a chart, he drew a graph, XY axis, and on the vertical axis he wrote the word performance, and on the horizontal axis he wrote the word trust. And the way they define those terms, performance is defined as how good are you at your job. So I think most of us are familiar with that. And trust is defined, what kind of person are you? What's your character, right? Clearly, nobody wants this person, a low performer of low trust on their team, obviously. Clearly, everybody wants this person, the high performer of high trust on their team. What they discovered is that this person over here, the high performer of low trust, is a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over the high performer of low trust, right? Now, if you look at it in a corporate context, we have 1 million metrics to measure someone's output, to measure someone's performance, and we have negligible to no metrics to measure someone's character or trustworthiness. And so what we have is a lot of toxic team members whose output is so strong that we end up promoting them into being toxic leaders, right? And so it's not that measuring the performance or the output is wrong. That's totally fine. It's that it's unbalanced. We need something to balance it off. So what are we adding to that? I'm a huge fan of 360s, quite frankly. I think the way we do 360s is usually flawed, though. The way we do 360s is we don't put them in anybody's file and we don't use them as a gauge of promotion. We use it as a learning tool. And I want to see that your 360 improves over time. It's the growth that I want to see. And by the way, if you're growing, your teammates like you more and your output is better, as is the team's output. The way we do it, and it's a way, it's not the way, but we've tinkered with it and we like it, is you take the group of people you work with, to your core team, so it has nothing to do with just engineers or just marketing. Like if you have regular interaction, your team, and each person fills out a form, very simple. What are your 3 biggest weaknesses? What are 3 specific examples of your biggest weaknesses or areas that you believe you need the most improvement? You have to write 3 specific things. And then what are the 3 specific examples of the areas that you've grown the most or your natural strengths? And you put 3 specific examples. We collate them, we give them around, and then we sit in a meeting and each person one by one has to read out their weaknesses, and the rest of us get to add to the list. And you don't get to say anything other than thank you. And we give a little preamble that starts off that says, these feedback sessions are to benefit you. We care about you. We want to see you grow as a human being. We want to see you grow as a team member. And the people in this room would rather not do this exercise because the stuff they want to tell you is really uncomfortable for them to tell you. But they're going to muster the courage to do it because they care about you. So say thank you. If you disagree with something, then just put it aside and brush it away. It's fine. If it triggers you, if it makes you angry, it's probably true. And so the only person who's allowed to record it is the person who's getting feedback. So if they want it for note-taking later, you do your 3 weaknesses, and then anybody can add to the list, and you can just say thank you. And if you go, thank you, we shut that down pretty quickly. And then the cool part is you do your 3 strengths, and anyone can add to that list. And what you discover is that you do have blind spots, but you also discover that you have a positive impact in people's lives that you didn't even realize you had. And it's pretty magical. The tears that happen usually happen with the positive stuff. It's really hard to do it the first time because it is a vulnerable environment, but over the course of time, it gets easier and people start really enjoying them. And there's variations depending on time. So we've also changed it where you do it and then you invite 3 people to come and do it with you. Just makes scheduling easier. But yeah, we really like those. So we're constantly looking for ways to keep the quantitative and the qualitative a little more balanced.